And I think that's what stands out to me as my first big gunfight because it was such a connection to me. And it's kind of funny. I was taking grenades and heavy fire, machine gun fire, and I'm pinned down. And I actually kind of had this little flashback to training, urban warfare training. And it was that, like, it just was like when we finally broke contact and got out of that, and we were at the extract point waiting for the armored vehicles to pick us up.
Welcome back to the Scorpion S podcast. Today is a very special guest, Stephen Drum, Navy SEAL and keynote speaker. Stephen, thanks for coming on the show.
And thanks for having me down here. It's been it's always great to get down to the city. I don't do it a lot, but
yeah, it's good to be here. We're going to get some good content here, I'm sure. And we're going to start off pretty hot. I know you decided to join the military and take the easy route. So why did you choose Navy SEALs?
Yeah, ever since I was a little kid, I knew that the military was in my future somehow.
Yeah.
Right. Initially, I thought, hey, I'm going to be in the Army. I want to be a Green Beret.
Yeah.
That was kind of, I saw John Wayne, Green Berets when I was on vacation. It was pouring rain outside. And I remember just watching that movie and then learning more about kind of elite soldiers. And so I'm like, that's a path. And I want to be an officer. Right. And so at some point, my uncle, who was a retired naval aviator, and he was an airline pilot at the time, he was somebody that I really looked up to. He had his own little plane. He had a sailboat, and I went on adventures with him. And at some point, he bought me a book on SEALs in Vietnam.
Okay.
And I started learning more about that, and I started kind of comparing all the different elite units, primarily like what they did in Vietnam. Those were definitely my heroes.
Yeah.
Like especially the Army Green Beret guys that did the SOG missions, cross-border, things like that. But at some point, I was like, I don't want to have to join the Army and spend a bunch, because you're impatient when you're young, right? I don't want to spend a whole bunch of time, in an Army before I get to try out for, Special Forces selection. Little did I know you actually could do that at the time. So I'm like, I want to go, I wanted to be an officer, but then I'm kind of like, my focus is I want to be in the SEAL teams.
Yeah.
That's what I really want to do. And he kind of was like, well, do that. It was like kind of against my parents' wishes. I was like, all right, I enlisted. Delayed enlistment program at 17 years old, and I came in. But, like everything, it doesn't always turn out how you plan it. And I'm really, really bad at math. So I actually didn't even qualify for SEAL training. Believe the recruiter, because I'm dumb in that way too. Believe the recruiter when he said, they'll just waiver those few points.
Oh, yeah, the recruiters.
I actually got a little hitch in my journey there before I even got to go out to SEAL training.
You know what? I think almost everyone that joins the military finds that their career path has some hitches to it. It's disappointing at the time, but when you look back on it, I think things tend to work out. So walk me through enlisting and then to the point where you actually get the orders to go to SEAL training.
Yeah, and that's perfectly stated, right? It's a very trite, overused statement. Things happen for a reason.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So I joined, went through boot camp thinking, all right, well, they're going to waiver those points. And they're like, and nobody's like, no, that's not happening. So I already had a job picked with like a MOS, Army Marine Corps. They call it a rating in the Navy. And that was home maintenance technician, which are like kind of Navy welders.
Okay.
Which I had no interest. I just kind of arbitrarily picked it. I'm like, all right, whatever. Didn't mean anything to me. The school at the time was in Philadelphia, not too far from where I grew up. Went to that school and looked at the different jobs that I could pick, and a lot of the top guys in the class, and I was not a big work with your hands guy, so I was not near the top of the class, and they were picking all these exciting pre-commissioned destroyers, Japan, all that, and I'm like, I saw Groton Sub Base, Connecticut, and nobody wanted to go there. But I'm like, well, it's a shore facility, it's a shore assignment. Right? I'm working on submarines at a shore facility. I'll have time to swim and run and train and all that. So that's what I did. And so while I was up there, there was actually a former SEAL who had gone through a divorce. He was East Coast SEAL. He'd gone through a divorce, and he basically left the SEAL teams. He was a photographer's mate. left the SEAL teams to move back closer to his kids who are in New England.
Sure.
And so he took a job there, but on his off time, he trained up a bunch of us that wanted to go to SEAL training.
Oh, hell yeah.
And so, again, I was 18 when I joined, and I really think that kind of 2-year, exit or off-ramp to my original plan was super beneficial. I was physically and emotionally more mature, and I think that actually probably was a really a benefit to me in the long run.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that that period between 18 to 20, not only are you putting on a little more mass, getting your endurance up, you're emotionally getting a little more mature because you've gotten some responsibility in the military. And from what I understand in the SEAL teams and the other special selections, they look for things like that: a little maturity, malleability, coachability, and obviously you need to be physically able to do the job as well. So looking back on it, I'm sure it helped you get through the process. Yeah,
and you're exactly right. And not only have I grown, have I gotten physically more capable, I have a better insight of what I was getting myself into from somebody who had actually done it.
Right.
Where you find you find all these people, oh, so and so was a Navy SEAL, and then you find out they're all liars.
Yeah.
But actually, I found an actual Navy SEAL, right, that could kind of give me the inside track and divert your energy and your training and your preparation to these things. Mm-hmm. These things don't matter, but these things do. Right. And
that's so
I think,
critical.
And when years later, when I started to round out my military career, I was up at the Recruit Training Command, which is the Navy boot camp up in Great Lakes. And I was overseeing the program that onboarded young men and women into the programs, into the Navy, into boot camp. But you had to have a contract. You couldn't try out in boot camp. You had to have a contract to try out for these programs to include SEAL. And whenever I would speak to and mentor the SEAL candidates, and I would ask who has college, some sort of college, it was more than half.
Oh, wow.
So it's a totally different demographic than your basic sailor that joins out of at 18 years old. And in fact, I think I was 21 by the time that I went through SEAL training in 1995, and I was like the third youngest guy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So you get to the point in your career where you're going to, what do they call it? BUDS, right?
That's right.
And that stands for?
Basic Underwater Demolition SEAL Training.
Okay. Yeah. I'm with two military guys. I'm going to try and explain a lot of these acronyms to the audience that's watching because, we can get into stuff and you and I know what we're talking about, but thinking about the listener. So you get to BUDS and everyone talks about Hell Week. That's like the hardcore kind of coup de grace of the training, and it really determines who's going to make it through or not. But do you have any moments during that training where it still kind of lives rent free in your head?
It's interesting. It's, to me, people ask me about SEAL training. They always want to ask about Hell Week.
Yeah.
And, Hell Week essentially it tests two things, right? It tests your commitment, right? When your body says, I physically cannot go any further, do you have that mental fortitude to push past those preconceived limits you may have put on yourself? And the second part is collaboration, right? When you're really in pain and when you're suffering, are you still the type of teammate that's going to step up and put the needs of your boat crew, of the mission, above your own interests and suffering? So it tests those two things. But for me, that wasn't the hardest part. I think for me, we had a pretty big class, about just short of 190 people when we started.
Yeah.
The first 4 days were very difficult because they're trying to get all the uncommitted. So they just hammer the dog snot out of you for the first couple weeks.
Yeah.
But, and we lost a lot of people. I think we lost 25 people gone, just like that in the first 3-4 days. But when it came to Hell Week, I think the one thing that I remember is Hell Week wasn't as intimidating because to me, I had no. I'm not saying that BUDS was easy by any stretch.
For sure.
But it was more of a confidence thing.
Yeah.
I was more worried about the things they were going to ask me to do that I couldn't do, right? Land navigation, what they call it, pull competency, pull comp with the scuba gear, those type of things, right? That's what I was worried about. But in fact, just showing up and keep going, I'm like, I can do that.
Yeah.
And for me, it was you do this thing called surf torture in Hell Week. You do it early on, but it's you do it a lot in Hell Week. You're basically cold, wet, tired the whole week. You don't sleep much, and they constantly try to make you cold and miserable. And so you'll go to the surf zone, the water's edge, you'll link arms and you'll walk out and you'll sit down and the water will be crashing over you, going up your nose, and it's cold, and then it'll pull you out. And it's very carefully calculated based on the time and the temperature of the water. And you'll see people that are just jackhammering. And this sounds, I'm not proud of this, but every time somebody would it's like that old movie, if you're a kid. I always say it's like the movie came out in like 1986 called Highlander, right? Whenever like an immortal kills another immortal, it gets their power. And I felt like every time somebody stepped forward to quit, it like made me feel stronger.
Hell
right?
yeah.
And I'm like, they can't take it anymore. I'm like, oh yeah, I got this. I'm still good.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah. So that's why I always, that kind of stands out to me.
Yeah, the water training, I think, was some of the best training I had in the military. I was on the swim team in high school, so I liked being in the water, and it really wasn't a priority for us compared to SEALs. But as a pilot, we went through a course called HOST, which is helicopter over water survival training. They put you in this simulated cockpit over a pool. They drop it in the water, flip you upside down. You got all your gear on, you got no air source, and what they do is they train, they'll jam the cockpit doors so you're upside down, disoriented, no oxygen, and you got to learn to unbuckle your seatbelt, fix jammed windows or doors, wait for your freaking co-pilot to get out first, so you're sitting there hey buddy, can you get the hell out of here? I'm running out of air. But some of those trainings were super valuable to me, and I always remember those, because when are you ever going to be able to do stuff like that again?
Yeah, it's not mandatory, but I think one of my deployments, we had it was going to be on an aircraft carrier, and so we would ride these C2, these planes on and off a lot, and I don't know why we did it. We didn't have to, but we all decided we were all going to go do the helicopter dunker, which is similar, I think, to what you described, but we're in the back, right, as passengers. Right. And so it's fairly easy for us. I think you do it, and like everything in the Navy, you ramp up. So it's basic. And then they turn the lights off, and they put I think they put masks over your eyes, so you have to do everything by feel. Yeah. And the whole thing is, as soon as you crash, you hit the water, you find that reference point. Right. You find that'll be like a piece of frame that runs the length of the aircraft, and use that to follow you out to. And I remember it was a bunch of us SEALs and a couple other guys, and there was one was a Navy chaplain, and he was not so comfortable in the water. And to his credit, though, but he soldiered through. But I remember with that first time that helo hit the water, and we were underwater, and because you're strapped in, right? Yeah. And you got to wait until they give you the signal to unbuckle. Yep. And his eyes were like his biggest saucers. He was not enjoying it. But to his credit, he stepped up and did it.
Yeah, one of the key skills to that, I think, we had to go through that just in the aptitude tests before we even got to flight schools. Being able to visualize and see things in your mind's eye. So
That's right.
If you can't physically see something, you have to visualize. Okay, we do blind cockpit drills where lights are off or you're in bad weather or whatever. Okay, I feel this switch. I know this one feels different. This one's next to the power lever, or this is the emergency jettison handle for the window. Like you said, you get those reference points, and the more you can practice that in your mind's eye, the more you're going to have success in real life, because you don't need to rely on your physical senses, because those could be distracting or giving you false information. But if you know, you can have success with these.
Yeah, and that's a great kind of off-ramp for us here. Is I don't know if you do this in the Army. I heard Navy pilots talk about kind of chair flying, which is based, I don't know if you did that, where you're kind of using the mental rehearsal, which is a performance psychology technique, to actually fly that. And I think one of the most kind of specific examples that we use in the SEAL teams is called the dirt dive. So when you do a combat swimmer operation, and I argue not in terms of physical output or danger, but as a skill set for land or for ground force commando units, the combat swimmer, the combat diving is the most difficult mission set to get it done right. Yeah. And so you're memorizing different, you're usually swimming in two pairs. One person has an attack board and a compass and a depth gauge. It's their job to make sure they stay on heading, they stay at the right depth, and then the buddy is tracking the time of each leg. And so you basically are, and they have technology now, but back then it was that for, every 100 yards that you swim, that's a 3-minute pace.
Yeah.
And you practice and practice until you do that. But before you do that before you actually get in the water for the training dive, you go in the parking lot and you simulate. You got the attack board and everything. You actually get on the heading and you're like, all right, here we go for 15 minutes. Your buddy squeezes you. Okay, now we're going to turn to 180 degrees. And, so you simulate that. And where I'm going with this is these are some of the things that I teach today in terms of putting yourself in that situation, using that technique, whether maybe it's a sales engagement or it's giving a presentation, like spend that time to mentally rehearse it, like perceive like what your senses are going to perceive and like what are you going to smell, what are you going to hear to make it that realistic. And you'd be surprised at how effective and powerful that can be. Absolutely.
I love hearing the similarities between the branches. We would call it on the land side, rock drills, rehearsal of concept. And I was listening to a business podcast from Alex Hermosi, and he was teaching this guy that ran a company. He had a bunch of door knockers, and he was having issues with retaining talent. And Alex was like, pretty much saying the same thing we do in the military, where it's like set up a fake door in your warehouse and have your door knocker sales guys literally knock on a door, say the pitch as if they're at the door, and run to the next house and do that 100 times. And then when they go out in the real world, they're going to have massive success selling. And the concept applies to business, military, no matter what you're doing. Train as you fight, or however you want to say it. It's very valuable.
No, and that's I think we would also do rock drills a lot before we go out on operations. And we would also call it kind of rehearsal of contingency as well. And so you break the operation into different phases. And you literally you break up into your little helo chalks, right? And you're like, okay, we touch down. And then you say, okay, what happens if we lose, chalk 1? What happens then? And then you go through that, right?
Yeah.
You go through, okay, you walk out to the airfield. Well, one helo's down. So now let's execute the bump plan.
Yep.
All right, let's go. Because we got time is of a consistent. You have nighttime hours you need to maintain. So it's like, all right, so reconsolidate to that bump plan, right? Because you still have min force requirements that you can meet. And I think, I work a lot with sales teams, and a lot of the more seasoned sales teams, like you have, especially in pharmaceuticals, it's like you'll get the biggest. If you want people to do role playing, they hate that.
Dude.
They hate that, and as somebody who's in the military, that's like 90% of your career is make believe, right? And so it's so natural. But for them, I think there's a level of artifice that is often kind of built into these scenarios where they're being graded for hitting metrics rather than hey, let's just get the reps and sets in. Let's just let's simulate this. Let's throw different curveballs to see how you're going to respond to those. And so I think really, even if you have people that are reluctant, I think if you can help kind of design a more realistic scenario that's not just based on hitting these graded metrics, then you'll probably have better buy-in.
I don't think I'll ever get over the planning mindset that was drilled into me through the military, and it's tough to explain that to some of my civilian friends, even when it comes to there's a birthday party on Sunday and we got to be there at 7, and I'm just like, all right, well, what route are we taking? How long's traffic? Is there construction? We're gonna get there. I'm gonna make sure that I bake in 15 minutes in case there's an accident so that we get there on time. It's like, dude, it's a party. You can show up late. I'm like, what?
Yeah,
I don't know what late means, and it's tough because it gives me some anxiety, and I know that I don't need to be there on time, but how do you get out of that mindset, man? It's just ingrained in me, and I love being on time. I love respecting people's time.
Yeah,
I think it shows kind of the other person who you are and how much you respect them. So I don't think I'll ever stop, but I need to remind myself that it's not as dire as it was in the military.
Right. Well, are you a get to the airport way too early guy?
Oh yeah, I'll just sit on my phone for 3 hours and have a beer or whatever. But no way am I cutting that close.
No, never. And even when I'm checking a bag, I'm still there way too early, just because I don't want to have that feeling of rushing. Right. It's like as an accident on the way to the airport, and now I'm like anxious. Like, why do I need that?
Yeah.
What does it cost me to get somewhere early and wait?
See, this is what I'm talking about. Is all of this is preventable, But when you want to risk it and you're like, it's only 30 minutes to the airport, and then it's not, and then you're like, we could have avoided this. We would have made our flight. Like, I don't know. I need to get more zen and more stoic as the older I get, but it's still hard to get rid of that planning mindset.
Yeah, it's, with anything, it's it's just you got to be reasonable with it, right?
Yeah,
you got
yeah.
some trade-offs, but yeah.
Anyone knows how to teach veterans about life balance, give me a call. Let's go back to SEAL training real quick. So what kept you from ringing that bell and giving up? Because a lot of people don't make it.
Yeah, no, the attrition rate's very high, 75 to 90%. And that depends on where you track it and everything. But for me, again, I go back to, like, my concern was not, like, I can't do this anymore. My concern was they're going to tell me that I can't show up to work anymore, right? That's what, like, that was my worry, is not being able to do something. And I think, and again, I think there's a mindset piece that many of us who were successful, not just in training, but throughout, if we had a lengthy career as SEAL operators, is you intuitively learn these kind of mindset things. We talked about the mental rehearsal, the visualization piece, but there's a level of detachment, meaning not being able to get too wrapped up and too influenced by the chaos and the emotions of the situation, is just to be like, okay, what exactly is going on here? What does it mean, right? Like, you may get into, like, the pilots, the OODA loop, right? Observe, orient, decide, act. It's like, okay, let me orient what's happening in this situation before I make a decision. And a lot of that is like, before I make the decision to ring that bell, like, can I make it to the next meal?
Sure.
How much longer are they going to be able to do this, right? And when it comes to that, what a lot of guys quit in the very beginning, it's because they're like, I can't do this. I can't do all this. They're like, no, you're not going to have to do all that for 6 months, because eventually they're going to have to teach you some shit, right? So you're going to, and so I was able to retain that perspective, which I think was ultimately super helpful for me. And it's like, and I never lost my connection to the commitment of how bad I wanted it.
Yeah.
Right. I never lost. And I think another thing was, and you could look at elements of stoicism, right? I think Marcus Aurelius used to talk about, and I don't remember the language he used, but it's almost like you have this board of advisors. Like, so if you visualize, like, the people that you respect the most, maybe the people that believed in you or maybe didn't believe in you, they're like, oh, you'll never make it through SEAL training. It's like, all right, they're watching you right now. They're looking at what you're doing right now.
Right.
Like, how do you respond to that, right? And I think that's always something that kind of keep me from ringing that bell.
Yeah, I think flight school in the military does a similar process where before they even let you sit in the cockpit, you go through academic training, you go through the helicopter overwater survival, and then you do SEER level C, which is survive, evade, resist, and escape. It's a course for pilots. It was mandatory back when I was in. I don't know if they're doing it anymore, but
I'm sure they are.
In case you go down behind enemy lines, they're going to teach you how to land nav, live off the land, evade capture, and then if you are captured, how do you mentally survive that? And again, kind of like your point, it's a training school, so you know there's an end date, but you have to get through it to get to the end goal of getting your wings. So you find these little things of, can I get to the next meal? I'm doing it for my buddy next to me. Some of these mental exercises that help you get through. One funny anecdote from my training. So me and my best friend, we're at the point where we're in the internment camp, and they give us these shower shoes, like rubber slippers. And at this point, we've been in the field for days, evading, no food, tired, wet, all that jazz. And we're filling sandbags, and he just looks at me. So my feet I'm like a size 13. They give me like an 11. He's like a 11. He's got a size 9. And he looked at me like, dude, my feet are killing me. Can I just wear your sandals for like a couple minutes? And it's those little moments in these military trainings or missions where you're like, all right, buddy, like I'll cram my size 13s into your 9s just so that you can have proper fitting shoes, because we're both in the suck together. And whatever it takes to mentally get through the next sandbag or whatever your obstacle is, you just find a way.
Yeah.
So I'll you hang out to some of those memories, even if it's like so shitty, you're like, you look back on it pretty fondly.
Well, if people ask me, like, what my greatest meal ever was. And I always go back to this one thing in the third phase of buds, before you go out to this remote island in one of the Channel Islands off the coast of California called San Clemente Island. That's where you do most of your third phase training. But third phase is dedicated to kind of land warfare, underwater demolition, and just explosive training and tactics. All those type of things rolled in together. And the first part of that, before you go out to the island, you go up to the mountains, Laguna Forest outside of San Diego, and you do land navigation. And you're out there and you're basically learning basic patrolling and land navigation. Yeah. And you're sleeping out with really, you don't have a tent or anything. You've got like a poncho. You don't really know what to do. You don't have bungee cords or anything. And it rained on us all week long. And one of the exercises that each squad would undertake would be, the instructors would have a campfire, and they would have you sneak in, see how close you could get before the instructors noticed you. I think for us, we had our turn the last night of training. It's raining, it's cold, and they didn't have MRE heaters at the time, these little heaters to warm your food. Yeah. And so you're just eating cold food, and all you want is just like a hot something, right? Yep. Even if it's like a hot chocolate or something. Yeah. And we're sitting there, and we did such a good job that the instructors were like, well, you guys can sleep in the tent, and then you could watch the fire. So 2 people were in charge of watching the fire, and you would take turns. And we're like the second pair, me and my buddy or my teammate there, my swim buddy, and the instructor gives us each like a can of like Chef Boyardee like lasagna, and it put it like in the hot coals, and like it can't eat, and it was like the best meal ever at that point.
Yeah, you go through the military, and the smallest things become the greatest things at some points, and that perspective I don't think ever leaves you.
Yeah.
So talk to me about the teams. There's multiple, everyone knows SEAL Team 6, but there's like multiple numbers, and like what team were you assigned to?
Yeah, so when I first checked in, my first SEAL team in 1996 was SEAL Team 2. And the original SEAL teams were 1 and 2, 1 on the East Coast, 2 on 1 on the West Coast, 2 on the East Coast. And we always make the joke that SEAL Team 2 was the first team because they were commissioned at the same time. Yeah. But they're 3 hours behind. So so we were the first team commissioned, SEAL Team 2.
Everything's competitive in the military.
And so it's like there is a kind of a cultural difference between the East and the West Coast teams because of a number of reasons. But back then, it was broken into geographic areas of responsibility, right? So 1, 3, and 5, you had like Team 1 was like Southeast Asia. Team 3 was like the Middle East, the desert. Team 5 was like the northern, like Korean area, kind of cold weather Asia. On the East Coast, it was 2 was Europe with some crossover into the Med. Team 4 was mostly South America, Caribbean. Team 8 was similar, a lot of overlap with Team 2, but a lot more like shipborne deployments and things like that. And then after 9/11, we grew a couple of new teams, Team 10, and then Team 7. We also had the SEAL delivery vehicle teams, SDV Team 2 in Little Creek and SDV Team 1 in Hawaii. And after 9/11, that kind of went out the window. Like we kind of divested a little bit in our geographic responsibilities, not entirely, but but we were doing Afghanistan, we're doing Iraq at the same time, so it was a lot. And then I think they started to kind of revisit those. Yeah. Like, so you may have Team 4 would, like, for example, would deploy to the same place, but you would just do, like, where Team 2 would do the same deployments as, say, Team 4, Team 8, but Team 2 would always, like, have Europe in the wintertime. So going back to those routes. So when I showed up at Team 2, it was primarily, like, I was lucky. They're like, what team do you want to go to? And everyone's like, I'm like, I know I didn't want to go to the jungle. I don't like being hot. Yeah. And everybody was cold when you're picking your jobs. We were out on the island and everybody's freezing cold. I'm like, I don't care. Yeah. I want to go to where my people are from, Europe. There you go. I'll blend in better there. And so I did that. And Team 2 used to work with like the Norwegians, best in the world at winter warfare. So I learned all that skiing stuff. But I was never able to do that because my deployments at Team 2 were like always to the summer, or the one winter deployment was like to the Middle East, all pre 9/11. Yeah. But I did learn how to ski in the Navy years later. The Navy taught me how to ski. So, but now in terms of now where they're at, I think they've really undergone a significant kind of redesign in how they're structuring and how they're breaking up responsibilities in an attempt to really kind of fight the next war, right? Not to be that constant malaise of fighting the last war we hear about in the military. It's like, okay, so we turned a lot of our responsibilities for like kind of the global war on terror, and now we're focused more on the peer, near peer, and integrating technology. You know, and how do we conduct operations with this technology, drone warfare? How do we integrate that into our capabilities and things like that? So
this brings up an interesting question. When it comes to like the special forces, you got the Green Berets, the SEALs, and everything. So they get to play by different rules. They have different budgets. Everybody kind of understands this in the military. How do you see, like, were you given technologies when you were in that were like maybe advanced copies of what was to come into the force earlier? Like, did you guys get to get creative and say, hey, I have a solution for this problem that we're having, and there's no generally funded piece of tech that we have yet? Can we like get iPads, or can we like do this? Like, what was kind of the tech stack that you guys were playing with?
Well, I mean, when you're talking about maritime capabilities, diving over the beach, and I think that's one of the things, you know, which sets the SEAL teams apart. I think there's a lot of, like, you see this, like, to get YouTube views, the SEALs this, the Green Berets, all this, like, oh, they're better this and that. Like, we had all of that rivalry early on, but after 9/11, like, it was that really went away. It was like, and so I got to go out in the field with Army Special Forces and get a little bit of work with Rangers here and there. But I mean, that went away, and now it's kind of back because we're bored and we want to build our YouTube following and stuff like that. Not me personally, but so I think I'm kind of going down a rabbit hole. But I would say the thing that sets SEALs apart is, and Army and Marine Corps have diving capability as well, but like, we're the ones that go over the beach. And when you're trying to go over the beach in the wintertime with dry suits, and you try to tactically, now, what are you going to do with the boats? How are you going to change out your clothing? It sounds very, very simple, but it's very, very difficult in reality. And so we had that kind of standalone. There's nobody in the military that does the type of diving mission that we do.
Right.
But there's also certain things, I think special operations, we would have, I'm trying to remember what the term was, but like when we would go on larger like direct action operations, you know, we would have our various stacks of aircraft, right? You have your close air support, your medevac, but then you have your kind of censored platforms that can see the different, whether it's FLIR, night vision, thermal capabilities, and they'd be able to pass that back to like a pad where we could see what the aircraft was seeing.
Right.
So we could kind of better kind of synchronize and coordinate. When it comes to airstrikes, or just more and more likely, like, you're seeing people that are mobilizing to come attack you, like in Afghanistan, like far out, they could kind of identify these things. I think we were one of the first ones to kind of use drones. Like, we had handheld drones.
Oh, cool.
Like the little ones that we would, and we didn't use them a whole lot. I didn't personally, but we had that capability and we would train with them a lot. We're just kind of, and it was early on. Like, we had all the big Reapers and all those big ones, but just that kind of, that internal capability to just throw up a drone and use those. And I think those have probably a lot of that stuff, and just some of the weapon systems, you know, night vision, things like that, and special operations, those eventually filter down.
It's kind of like a proving ground for technology, and obviously funding is a big issue when it comes to defense budget. And you think about the size of the forces of, I don't know how many branches we have now, if you technically count Coast Guard, and we got Space Force and stuff. But
I always forget about them.
There's a lot of people, so you can't just field all the cool stuff to everybody because it costs money. You got to maintain it. I think just as I was getting out, the unit was changing from the standard green phosphor night vision goggles to the white phosphor, which was really cool because I put those on.
PVS-31s, I think.
I put those on for a couple flights before I got out, and I was like, holy crap, this is like super clear. Like, why do we not have these sooner? Because that fuzzy green light, I mean, it works, but when I saw what I could have saw, I'm like, damn, maybe I'll stay in a little bit longer.
It was funny. I actually did some of the testing for those. Like, one of the jobs I had after I did what was called a troop chief. It's basically my last kind of tactical leadership position. I went over to what we call combat development, and that's basically where I was kind of the go-between. And my portfolio was weapons and vast visual augmentation systems, so scopes, night visions, explosives, all those things.
Yeah.
And so we would do a lot of the testing with that. We were kind of like, we would take the needs of the end user in the tactical sense, the operator, and kind of be the go-between between them and industry.
Yeah.
To kind of and help them develop technology, but also a lot of it was like, hey, these are some of the problems we're seeing, and just getting them to tweak and fix certain things. So
for sure.
But it gave me exposure to a lot of that stuff, which is cool.
That's super cool. In the SEALs, did you have a specific job? Like, the mission is the mission, but then like, does the individual have a specific job, or is everyone trained on everything?
No, you have different qualifications for sure. You have, and the big ones in a tactical sense are, the ones that I had, I was a sniper and I was a breacher.
Okay.
But you have medics, obviously that's a big one, and you have the communicators. And most of the communicators, your radio man, whatever, but they also are JTACs, Joint Terminal Attack Controllers, right? And those are the people that are qualified, to drop ordnance, right? You call for fire, like, because you could see there's, blue on blue, like there's a lot of qualification that goes into being trusted. You actually have your own designated call sign when you deploy as a JTAC to be control, and you're usually right next to the ground force commander, and you're helping the ground force commander control the stack of aircraft, right? It can become complex when you have, like, you're getting close air support from, maybe it's an Apache. Well, that Apache runs low on fuel, and now they're being replaced by an F-18, completely different capabilities. And so it requires a lot of skill. So I was the sniper, I was the breacher, which was good. I got to do a little bit of both. My first combat deployment to Iraq, got to go out as a sniper, which was interesting. But yeah, I think what a lot of people don't realize is how much time we spend on training qualifications. Yeah. Like, I was also a diving supervisor. I was also a free fall jump master, a static line jump master, free fall jump master, right? Because everything high risk has to have somebody overseeing that. Right. And we train ourselves. So you have to get these, they're not sexy quals, but you have range safety officers. Well, then you have dynamic range safety officer. You have close quarter combat range safety officer. So I was all of those things. So when we go overseas and we want to run training, you have to have somebody that can make sure that you do that safely and effectively. And so a lot of our time is getting those type of qualifications.
This is a good distinction from just having a job to actually being a professional. All of those trainings and those qualifications help you as the individual do a job right, but then help teach other people how to do the job right. And that's what gets you guys to be so respected, is that you do things well all the time. It was kind of how they explained to us, being a military aviator, you're not a pilot. You can teach a monkey to fly an aircraft, but an aviator is someone that is a professional. They're taking the job seriously. You have lives at risk. You're spending hours and hours and hours of just planning one flight or one piece of a mission, just so that 90 minutes can go off with, hopefully without a hitch, but if there are hitches, you had to know how to compensate for that. But that's the distinction between just doing a job and actually being a professional, is that training and that preparation. Well, and it's funny you mention that, because you'll see, like, there's guys, civilians, that could outshoot some of the best SEALs, right? And they're like, I can outshoot Navy SEAls. Okay, I outshoot Delta Force guys. Are like, all right, cool. That's your one thing. Yeah. That is one tiny slice of the pie compared to all the things that we have to do. Right. All the coordination and technology integration and kind of team dynamics and a whole host of different skill sets. Yeah. It's like, oh, good. You can beat up a Navy SEAL because you're really good at MMA. Good for you, but you can't do this, and this, right? I mean, and that's the thing. It's a professionalism, and I think what sets special operations. And again, I think Green Berets, like, they're probably at the top in terms of they actually have in their selection that Robin Sage, where their whole concept was to be able to kind of parachute into behind enemy lines and train up a guerrilla force. Yeah. But we also do that, right? We do that, and a lot of, like, us and Green Berets, Special Forces,
are very closely aligned in our mission sets, even though we are kind of more of a maritime focus. And then MARSOC, they kind of fall in between, right? But we all have that kind of like, our job is to, go out and punch the enemy in the nose, unilateral operations, all Americans. But eventually, our job is to kind of mature that conflict by now doing by, with, and through operations. We have to now grow the capability and capacity of the host nation partner forces, because we want to work ourselves out of a job.
Right.
So every operation, like every 6 months, we want to have less, and we want to do less and less, and have the partner force do more and more. And that's what sets special operations apart, is we're constantly training other people, and not just to build their capacity, but also to give us access and placement to certain areas as well.
You're building relationships at so many different levels between countries and all the way down to the individual. And to your point of like the civilians who can shoot well, it's like, all right, cool, but could you sit in a car with a Democrat and you're a Republican for 8 hours? Like, some people would freak out just doing that. So it's like you got to be able to work with people of all creeds, colors, and theologies, and still go kill the enemy at the same time, and like forget about all that shit. So that's what sets you guys apart, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's one of the things for sure.
Yeah. Without getting into anything classified, do you have any missions that you remember that you really enjoyed being on, or like had some impact on you?
Yeah, I mean, every Navy SEAL will tell you like the stuff that they, or I shouldn't say every, but I think almost every would tell you that like what we want to do is the direct action operations, right? And that is the stuff you see in the movies, right? It's the kicking doors in, attacking enemy compounds, kill capture operations. That's the sexy stuff. That's what we want to do, right? And before 9/11, we weren't really doing much of that. We had some shipboarding operations, we had reconnaissance missions, but it was really that. And my first combat deployment was 2004. Our command was doing a lot of direct action missions, but then we had to pivot to do PSD. So we had
PSD is what?
Good question. Personal security detail.
Okay.
Think of it as the Secret Service detail that protects the president. That's kind of the job that we took. And so once we toppled Iraq, we had to now fill that vacuum with an interim government, prime minister, deputy prime minister. And so we had to make sure that we kept them alive. We had to get them out to see the people and travel. And so that was our job. But in the meantime, we're taking indirect rocket fire into the, threatening the government. And so then we would actually go out on sniper operations to kind of limit the enemy freedom of movement, to kind of cut down on their ability to launch rockets and mortars in. And so that was kind of really my first taste of combat. And so I think, you talk to any soldier and it's like you train, but you kind of always wonder, like, what's going to be like when I'm actually in combat for real? Like, is my training, is it going to be good enough? Am I going to be good enough? And I think that's what stands out to me as my first big gunfight, because it was such a connection to me. And it's kind of funny. I was taking grenades and heavy fire, machine gun fire, and I'm pinned down, and I actually kind of had this little flashback to training, urban warfare training. And it was that, like, it just was like when we finally broke contact and got out of that, and we were at the extract point waiting for the armored vehicles to pick us up, and you're kind of setting a perimeter, and I'm just thinking about like training, and it was just that's what kind of forms how I train people today in a corporate environment. Is there is that connection. If you make the preparation and the training effective, there is that tie-in. And it's not always about life or death. It's like, and then when you go out to do something high stakes, if your job's on the line, right? You've got to sell this product.
Right.
You've got to sell yourself. And you're feeling your hands are sweating, your heart's racing. And your body, your brain is not really discerning that much of a difference between actual danger and that. Like your mind is not making that disconnect there. And so high stakes business situations are so much more can be like combat. Consequences obviously vary greatly,
for sure,
but can be much more closely aligned than people would think. So for me, I think it was just that first time of making that connection of just how important the right training and preparation is.
Yeah, someone on the internet said something, or maybe the definition of courage is not the absence of fear, but having fear and moving forward anyway, something along those lines. I'm sure people have it in the civilian world with the business deals and their jobs and everything, is they're afraid. So how do you talk business people through like getting over that fear and like still going through with the mission, whatever their mission is?
Well, I think one of the things that you'll sometimes see are people who are just like, and maybe the excuse is I don't have the bandwidth in terms of time to prepare. And so they're like, I can wing it and get by.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can. But sometimes you don't know what it's costing you. When you leave that room after that at sales engagement, right?
Yeah.
If you damaged your reputation, or suddenly you find yourself like, I've got to be, this, everything hinges on this one type of engagement. And so you're holding on, as they say in hockey, right? You're gripping the stick too tight, right? And so you go in there and you're so focused on that objective that you risk that level of situational awareness to make that connection. You end up damaging a relationship. And so foundational to what I teach is you have to be intentional, you have to be deliberate, which means you have to invest in the most fundamental elements of your craft, of your basics. You have to know them. Just like you talked about in that cockpit with your eyes closed, knowing exactly where everything is, where every control, where every switch is. So when you go into an engagement, like if I walk out onto a stage, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when my slides aren't working.
Right.
Can I continue on without skipping a beat in my presentation if my slides aren't working? Well, I better be.
Yeah.
I better be able to do that, right? And so we have to be able to do that. You have to have a level where you feel you have a level of readiness that says, you know what, if this happens, I'm going to do this, 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 and this. I got this. And you have a level of earned confidence that is tied to the belief that you are prepared and you are ready.
Very cool. Yeah, it's all about proper planning, and the more you do something really with anything, the more confident you get, the less fear you have of it. I think back to the first episode of this podcast I did. Before I started doing this, I hated the sound of my voice. I hated how I looked on camera, and then I started making content. Now I'm like, we're just having a conversation. I forget the cameras are there, and I have a great time doing it. So if you're going into the board meeting for the first time, or you're trying to close a contractual deal, and they go, okay, well, where are the 2024 numbers so we can just cover something? You're like, I don't know, I don't have it. You already lost the deal because you didn't take the time to prepare for that mission per se. But I hate the don't have time excuse. I think we make time for what's important to us. And I mean, there's plenty of times where you wish you didn't have to do something, but 18-hour work days, 24-hour work days, the more you push yourself to these limits, the more you know what you're capable of. And civilians, I don't think, have an environment where they're pushed to a level like that, because it's civilian life. You 9 to 5, you get a paycheck. Like even if you get fired, you go get another job. Like how bad is it really? But if you switch your mindset, you can be that much more successful if you make the time to do these things.
Yeah, and that's right. And I think most of my audience, the people that I typically speak for or work with, are those that kind of have that perform under pressure type job where stress management is key. And now stress management, it exists in all of our lives, our complex lives that we live today. But I think one of the things when I talk to people, one of the things that I see that's most consistent across all the different types of organizations, industries I work with, is this concept of bandwidth. And it's what I see is what I call a leadership bandwidth crisis.
Yeah.
And we typically think of bandwidth in terms of time, right? I don't have the bandwidth to schedule that meeting. I don't have the bandwidth to kind of study for this, okay? But really that bandwidth, the greater risk is what it's costing us. Bandwidth is simply space. And that can be time and space on our calendar, but it's also cognitive real estate. And it's emotional capacity, right? Is our ability to have a strong focus on things that matter. Our ability to kind of say, okay, let me think through this problem. Like, let me say, how can I kind of detach from some of this daily firefighting and be more invested in the strategic thinking I need to really move that down the line? And I think that's a lot of it is, and if you're in a position of leadership, it's like, are you holding on too tightly to the controls? Are you hoarding certain type of tasks because you fear that it's not going to be done 100% perfectly? And that's what I call the 80% rule, is when you have certainty that you can delegate that task and it's going to be done at 80% quality. Get it off your plate.
Yeah.
Free off your plate. And now it's like, hey, we like to have this badge of honor. We only accept perfection and nothing but the best. Okay, but it all comes at a cost. Right?
Absolutely.
And that cost is retaining those tasks on a very overloaded plate.
Yeah.
So start getting tasks off your plate and prioritize what requires you to really prepare for at a deeper level to be strategic.
Yeah. So this is kind of a good segue. Talk to me about transitioning out of the military and what your plan was to get into what you're doing now.
Yeah, I think as I was coming up, my career was winding down, and I had taken an assignment up at the Navy's boot camp, right? And the initial job there was to kind of oversee the onboarding of young men and women who that had these contracts to try out for SEAL, diver, air rescue swimmer, combatant craft crewman, which we call SWCC, and EOD. Mm-hmm. And so it was our job to kind of mentor and train them. And so I did that. And while I was there, I think I was there 2 years of a 3-year billet, and I was approached. Like the story is myself, a clinical psychologist and a Navy chaplain, locked into a room and said, we need to figure out how to make our sailors and officers tougher. Right? Because the Navy had always been like, oh, we'll take the people that don't want to be marching and in the dirt. We want the smarter people, the more technical people. But within that, you kind of lose that connection to like that 1942 sailor fighting the Empire of Japan in the Pacific. Kamikazes, right? That's a warfighter, that's a warrior. And we had kind of lost that ethos and that identity. And so it was our job to kind of, how do we build that? And so I was like, well, this is a great opportunity. When we created this program, and the program exists today and it's expanded, is how do I take that and translate and distill that into content that's appropriate for a business, a first responder, or even a nonprofit environment, right? And so I did that, and I was like, well, how am I going to do that? Well, I've always been an instructor. I've liked getting in front of people. Now, being a keynote speaker is a 100% different type of skill set. But I'm like, I think I could do this. When I step out on a stage in front of like 1,000 people, it's like I'm walking out onto that X. It's like somewhat like fast roping out of a helicopter, meaning you better be dialed in. You better be ready to go. You better be ready to pivot and adjust if things don't go according to plan. So I really like that. I really enjoy that.
You get that same physiological response, like the heartbeat increasing and your alertness comes like alive. Do you get that, or is it totally different?
It depends. Like, obviously, you know, there's more of a, I mean, I'd be lying if I didn't say and truthfully, every speaking engagement, the ones that I do where there's not actually a money exchange, and the one where I go out and I get paid a good amount of money to speak in front of a very large audience, right? They're all important to me, and I all do the same level of preparation, but you just feel the gravity more when it's like a big stage in front of a bunch of people as opposed to like a smaller group. And so there is like a feeling and there's a feeling of nerves, and I welcome that. Because it means that I'm not taking it for granted. For sure. That it means that my focus is sharper, right? I remember when I interviewed an Olympic swimmer named Dana Vollmer, and she's a record-setting Olympic swimmer, and we talked a lot about kind of the internal monologue that we have, the self-talk, and she would always say she's getting ready to, heading out of the locker room, kind of really feeling nervous as she's moving over to the pool, the starting blocks. She would say, I'm nervous. Good, right? Because that's how you're supposed to feel. If I wasn't nervous, I should maybe be worried a little bit, right?
How much do you actually care if you're not nervous?
And so I welcome that.
Transitioning to a couple fun things kind of towards the end of the pod. I mean, as always, the hour melts away, but what I get asked from my friends all the time being out of the service is like, what do certain words or phrases mean? Because we have a certain lingo that we use amongst ourselves. So I'm curious your take on the Navy side or just military in general, if you had some favorite phrases or sayings, and you know, they can be military-esque. You don't have to censor anything. So if you had any that stick in your mind, like curious what your thoughts are. I
think the ones that I go to are the ones that have stuck with me. They're not always but the one that you hear a lot, right? And I'm sure you've heard this is slow is smooth, smooth is faster, right? Which
Yeah.
means it's that, and what that means is we try to get speed by like gripping tight and like, and so it results in kind of a kind of sometimes spastic type of performance. Whereas when you train smooth, you're training to be kind of machine-like, right? When we're out on the range and we're doing our weapons procedures, our reload procedures, our weapons malfunctions, it's smooth, it's machine-like. And the more machine-like and smooth you are, naturally you're becoming more efficient. The more efficient you are, the more fast you are. And so in training, when I would run close quarter combat training, which was like your SWAT team style entries, kicking in doors, breaching explosives, clearing rooms, hostage rescue type stuff. When I was training that, it would always be, one of the things I would always have to do is pull on the reins, is to pull guys back, to move slower, to make it clean, make it really clean, make it really perfect, and then we can worry about adding speed. So that's one of them. Another popular expression is, and it's not unique to the Navy, it's out there a lot, is when and it's a variation of this, when the stakes are high, right, when it's life or death, right, you're not going to magically rise to the occasion. You're going to fall to your level of training, right? You always think that people are going to step up and do these wonderfully heroic things, and you'll hear like athletes, oh, I thrive under pressure. In reality, if you really break that down statistically, you do not perform better under pressure. You don't.
Interesting.
Which means that your level of performance in practice has to be raised as high as possible, because then that pushes your high stakes performance, that performance under pressure, to a higher level, right? Which means you can't, again, back to the theme, we can't wing it. We have to invest the time into training. And one final one that I always kind of like is, no matter what, there is always something you can be doing to improve your fighting position, right? If you think like Vietnam, Korea, the soldiers in those trenches facing an onslaught, running low on ammunition. The hordes are about to, okay, what are we doing? Like we're spinning, we're anxious. Let's do something productive to make us at least occupy that headspace with something that's productive and useful.
I think about that a lot in the civilian world, places I go and businesses and stuff. I'm like, and as a commander, it bothered me because I have a bunch of soldiers that are sitting around doing nothing sometimes. I'm like, what the F are we doing here? Like, there's how many freaking manuals you can go read and teach yourself something. There's equipment we can pull out and train on. Like, we're not sitting here on our phones because it's 2024 and you're just waiting to go home. I'm like, you're getting paid to train. Like, let's fucking do something. But also, you can't be like that hardo and be like, we're training until the last minute and then everybody hates you. Like, there's a balance, but there's too many times where I see people just sitting around doing nothing. I'm like, could you sweep the place? Or like, you're a business owner. Can you like clean the windows outside? Like, little things like that make a huge difference. Yeah,
and that's the level. Like when you know you're in like a really high performing organization, you have that level where you don't need to be told, right? You don't need a commander or a senior leader to drive that from the top down.
Right.
It's the people in there that take ownership of that and they take initiative.
Yeah.
Like they see something over there that needs to be done. They don't need to be told to do it. They have enough pride and ownership to go just take care of it themselves. And that's about a cultural shift, right?
Cultures like that are amazing to work with.
Yeah.
For me, I've got a couple that are probably more on the comical side, but my buddies always love it when I call something a soup sandwich, when a scenario is just so effed up. You're like, imagine if you took 2 pieces of bread and you poured a can of soup on it and tried to eat it. It would be just freaking messy. That's a fun way to describe effed up situations. Trying to cram 10 pounds of shit in a 5-pound bag. Quite literally an impossible task, but when the commander says do something, you got to at least try to figure it out. And then there's the good idea fairy, which exists in corporate. The good idea fairy, so for example, you know, as a commander, I was in charge of like planning training and what have you. So get to an 80% solution, cool, let's rock with it. We're going to go with this. Then you got all your people around the table. Well, actually, what if we did this? Or what if we did this? Or what if we did this? It's like we already got to a consensus, and now you want to throw in these monkey wrenches, and you're not the one that has to figure this shit out. You're just throwing crap at the wall and seeing what sticks, and it bugs the crap out of me because everybody can pull out 10 good ideas, but if you're not the one executing it, maybe just SDFU.
Right. Well, and there's the flip side of that coin, which are the resistors, is the people that always want to tell you why you can't do that,
right?
Why it won't work. Right. And to that, I say, okay, well, let's get it all on board. Why won't this work? Okay, we've got those out of the way. We good? We done?
Yeah.
Okay, now show me how we're going to get to where we need to get to. Right. And the other side of that is when I was working combat development, right, it's always like dealing with issues. We want this new type of gear. We want this. I'm like, okay, sounds good. Put pen to paper and write it up. Oh, well, okay. If it's important to you, then you you invest.
Yeah.
You put some skin in the game in terms of your time. If it's that important, and some guys would, and I'd be like, all right, I can't guarantee this is going to happen, but let me try to push this forward to the best of my ability. So it's a matter of like, okay, somebody's got a good idea. All right.
I do that all the time in my day-to-day life. I'm like, okay, when can I have that by? And it's like, all right, well, you're just going to armchair quarterback things and like hope that I do it. You're mistaken, my friend.
That's the right approach, I think.
Yeah. 2 questions to wrap it up. This is more so for the podcast. When you're downtown, do you have any favorite restaurants you like to visit?
Yeah, it's I always like my burger place is always Au Cheval or Small Cheval. Like I always like that. If I'm in the area, I always try to make that happen. I love them. I haven't been there in a while, but I used to like to go to Sunda.
Oh yeah.
And rooftop bar in the summertime, the London House, right? That's fun. And like in terms of our family, like where everybody can be happy, we go to the city as a family. And like I have my 2 kids, my wife will go to like RPM Italian, the kids like that.
Very nice. Yeah, my buddy's getting married this weekend. We're going to be at RPM Seafood, and I'm super excited about this weekend.
I haven't eaten there. I've heard it's good though.
Dude, they did the tasting, the like pre-ceremony menu figuring out stuff, and they came back and they're like, "You're gonna like this wedding."
Yeah.
So
awesome.
I'm super jacked about that. And for the audience members that want to learn more about you, follow your journey, where can they find you?
Yeah, find me on LinkedIn, Instagram, Stephen Drum, STEPHEN. And it's Stephen.Drum, DRUM on Instagram. You can go to my website, which is stephendrum.com, STEPHEN,
Easy peasy.
Yeah.
Well, I hope we do more business together in the future.
Yeah.
I'm super glad we connected through that LinkedIn group for Chicagoland veteran businesses. And thanks so much for coming on the show, man. This was a great conversation.
It was fun. Thanks for having me.